some recommendations. We should strengthen the new and existing penalties for violating reporting requirements under the CBCA. Corporations should be held accountable as individuals, and if the Act is violated, there needs to be clarification on who can and can be exempted from the regulations. This bill is a critical update to our laws, and I look forward to seeing it at committee where we can make amendments to improve the bill and eliminate money laundering in Canada. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member will have 5 minutes in questions and comments the next time that this House is being debated. Statements by members. Déclaration des députés. The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today marks the National Day of Mourning for workers killed, injured, or made ill by workplace conditions and hazards. In 2021, over 1,000 workplace deaths were reported in Canada, with 18 of those young people from communities across the country. We must put health and safety at the forefront of all jobs to prevent further work-related injuries and loss of life. To start, we know that a unionized job is a safer job. Collective bargaining and the right to strike are fundamental rights, and these rights are central to our democracy and have resulted in improved working conditions for all workers. I'd encourage all my colleagues to read and press for the recommendations of the Canadian Labour Congress to ensure that every worker in Canada is safe. And so while we pause today to honour and remember each life tragically cut short, let's also continue to push for better. Thank you.
The honourable member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to Jim Howlett, who after a brief battle with cancer passed away on April 9th of this year. Our thoughts and our prayers are with his family, his wife Carol, their children and partners, Jesse and Keith, Katie and Vlad, Aaron and Stephanie, grandchild Evan, and close family friend and honorary mother, Lydia Cartledge. Madam Speaker, Jim dedicated nearly 30 years of his life serving as a volunteer on local boards and committees, including 17 years at the Hamilton Conservation Authority, and up until the time of his passing as a board member of the Hamilton-Oshawa Port Authority. He was an environmental pioneer, advocating for a clean airshed, clean soil in Hamilton's industrial lands, and clean water in Hamilton Harbour. He pushed all levels of government to make the environment a priority in his neighbourhood, and much of the progress we've witnessed in and around Hamilton Harbour can be attributed to Jim's efforts. Most important to me, Madam Speaker, Jim Howlett was my friend. And I'm going to miss our conversations about all things Hamilton. His passing is an incredible loss for the beach community, the city of Hamilton, and our country. He will be sorely missed.
The Honourable Member for Parleneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Madam Speaker, as a Member of Parliament for Parleneuf-Jacques-Cartier, I have the pleasure of being in regular contact with the seniors of the riding. At each visit and each event, I can only admire their great sense of belonging as builders of our communities. Allow me to thank our Ms. Linda Lavoie-Leclerc from Cap Santé, Jacqueline Gignac from Deschambault-Grondines, Micheline Côté from Donnacona, Ghislaine Lepage-Alain from Lac-Beauport, Micheline Bernier from Neuville, Yves Laroche from Pont-Roche, Sylvie Lefebvre from Portneuf, Robert Julien from Saint-Alban, Carole Delbecq from Saint-Augustin-de-Desmaures, Martine Germain from Saint-Basile-de-Pont, Michel Després from Saint-Brigitte-de-Lavel, Étienne Dusablon from Saint-Casimir, and France Laprise from Sainte-Catherine de la Jacques-Cartier, Gaétane Martel from Sainte-Christine d'Auvergne, Monsieur Raymond Groslo from Saint-Gilbert, Denise Julien from Saint-Léonard de Porto, Shirley Kiley from Shannon, Gaétane Saint-Laurent from Stoneham, and Edith Boivin, whom I have the pleasure of visiting tomorrow at Riviera-Pierre Bridal Ball. Thank you to all of you.
Honourable Member for Nepean.
Madam Speaker, as a major energy producer, the global shift to net zero presents both a challenge and an opportunity for Canada. More than $100 trillion in private capital is projected to be spent between now and 2050 to build the global clean economy. We must capitalize on Canada's competitive advantages, including our skilled and diverse workforce, and abundant supplies of critical minerals and metals, clean energy, and technologies needed to power the global clean economy. We also have uranium and developing small modular nuclear reactors. We must attract investments for extraction, processing, or recycling of critical minerals essential for clean technology supply chains. We must take a Team Canada approach and work collaboratively with provinces and Indigenous communities to fast-track projects' implementation and realize our full potential. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Hear, hear. The honour member for Edmonton-Griesbach.
For over 40 years, unions, families, and communities have observed National Day of Mourning to recognize all of those who've tragically lost their lives on the job, like my dad, who left us when I was just 12 years old, killed on a work site in northern Alberta where his employer recklessly failed to supply a safe work environment. To all those families like my own, I see you, I am with you, and together we will ensure that no more lives are lost. In particular, I want to recognize the many single parents who are left shocked by the sudden workplace death of their partners and are forced to parent alone, like my mom. To her and so many like her, thank you for always being there for me and for us. And finally, I want to say thank you to all of those who have shown kindness to the families who have lost their loved ones. It is because of your support that so many of us are able to stand and continue to fight for workers' justice today. It is the deepest of solidarity, and I will never forget that support. If you have time to spend with families and victims of workplace deaths at gatherings across Canada today, thank you. It means the world to us.
L'honorable député de Saint.
The Honourable Member for Saint Laurent. Madam Speaker, April is the month of Autism Awareness Month, and I would like to speak on behalf of Canadians who are part of the autism spectrum, because this community wishes and deserves to be listened to. Before becoming MP, I was a teacher and a specialized educator, and I worked in neuroatypical classes.
In order to thrive. Currently, there's a lack of support. Additional funding is required to provide students with autism, special education teachers, childcare workers, and behavior analysts, to name a few. When it comes to autism, early intervention is key. Families of children with autism need access to therapies that have been proven to significantly improve outcomes, such as speech-language pathology, occupational therapy, and applied behavioral analysis, which are too expensive for the average family to afford. These kids deserve that early intervention, and together I know we can do better to make Canada a more inclusive place for all. Thank you.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Madam Speaker, the Charter of Freedoms and Rights is now in a whole bunch of fights. From religion to speech, libs extended their reach, and the courtrooms are full of their plights. Let's start with the censorship bills. C11 and 18 are the pills that restrict what we see and take down if they don't agree, against all Canadians' wills. And then let's go to the guns that sports shooters use just for fun. They'll put in a ban while the crooks to a man will keep theirs while charges are none. The privacy rights of us all will be toast if their bill doesn't fall. C27 won't aid our European trade if it doesn't comply with their call. And this is the end of my rhyme because I've just run out of time, or for sure there'd be more I could say on this score. Our rights I'll protect. They're sublime.
Yeah. The honourable member for Cloverdale, Langley City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Following a 3-year break due to COVID, I'm excited that the Cloverdale Rodeo will be once again taking place from May 19th to 22nd. Established in 1888, this agricultural fair and exhibition is Canada's second largest rodeo event. The Cloverdale Rodeo and Country Fair was created to encourage the development of agricultural resources in the Fraser Valley of BC. There will also be a variety of food vendors and a parade of over 1,000 participants, myself included. From marching bands to skateboarders, dance groups, and clowns, there'll be something for everyone to enjoy. Live musicians will play on stage as the surrounding community comes together to share in sport, art, song, and dance. I encourage both British Columbians and those outside the province to come and experience our Western hospitality. Join me in getting back to country and agriculture at the Cloverdale Rodeo this upcoming May-long weekend. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Madam Speaker, I would like to bring to the attention of this House the situation of just one of many political prisoners in Iran, Mojahed Kurkur, who has been unjustly sentenced to death by the Iranian regime. He was wrongfully convicted of the murder of a 9-year-old boy, despite the boy's parents having testified it was in fact state security officers who killed their son. Both parents were present when their son was shot, and the father was left paralyzed during the same incident. Mojahed has been subject to severe torture in prison and was only recently allowed to call his family after several months. The Iranian regime continues to harass and imprison women's rights activists who are protesting the killing of Mahsa Jina Amini and fighting for women, life, freedom. This is unacceptable. I call on Iran to stop the imminent execution of Mojahed Kurkur and to release all political prisoners and stop the executions. Thank you, Madam
L'honorable député de Montmagny.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny-Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last Saturday was the 7th edition of the Spaghetti Supper in Montmagny. The charity event organized by Les Enfants du Cœur was finally back after a 3-year forced break. The evening was a great success. 1,356 tickets were sold and a sum of more than $17,000 was raised. The profits from this dinner will support the Foundation's primary mission to support projects that encourage healthy lifestyle habits and promote sports activities among youth. I would like to congratulate and warmly thank Francis Fréchette and Frédéric Ouellet, the founders of Enfants de Cœur. I don't know if they're enfants de cœur, but nevertheless, thanks to their involvement and dedication, hundreds of young people have the opportunity to grow up healthy. I would also like to thank all the volunteers who ensured that the evening ran smoothly and the partners who made it possible for everyone to enjoy an excellent meal in good company. I am extremely proud of the vitality and community spirit of my riding. Long live les enfants de cœur.
Je vais me corriger avec...
I said Les Basques, but I meant Rivière-du-Loup, but I think that you understood nevertheless.
Scarborough Rouge Park.
Madam Speaker, last week I called one of my favorite Canada Summer Jobs employers, Kajanan or KJ Chandrasegaram of Bliss Stations, to inform him that his budding company has been approved for the program. I was devastated to learn from his brother of the untimely passing of KJ on April 18, 2023, at the young age of 26. In 2018, KJ founded Bliss Stations, a dessert company based in Scarborough Rouge Park. His passion and determination turned Bliss Stations into a burgeoning force at major events in Scarborough and beyond. He persisted during the COVID-19 pandemic and came out stronger. KJ sought to expand his business this summer by providing 12 young people their first summer job. Madam Speaker, I'm heartbroken by KJ's loss because of his infectious spirit of entrepreneurship, determination, and sheer hard work. A life of promise was cut short, but I'm told that his family will continue to build his dream. Please join me in extending our condolences to KJ's family, friends, and his team at Bliss Stations.
The honourable member for Calgary-Shepherd.
Madam Speaker, last weekend I joined Rabbi Ruben Pupko for their Shabbat at Beth Israel Beth Aaron Synagogue in Côte Saint-Luc in Montreal. I was saddened to learn there of the loss of a great local leader, Debbie Sonberg-Aschenkopf, who passed away recently. Now, what a rabbi is to the Torah, so was Debbie to everything in that synagogue. She knew who liked to sit where, who was ill, who was doing better, who was getting along with whom, and who wasn't getting along with whom. Diane was literally the keeper of everything and all the knowledge in the synagogue. And by the tales of those there, I mean everything. She was also a committed and passionate Jew, absolutely devoted to her faith and to her synagogue. Debbie embodies the prophet Isaiah's teaching that each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly and under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And Debbie was a cheerful giver of her time and love for Judaism and Yahweh. Baruch Dayan Ha-Emet.
The honourable member for Essex.
Speaker, in 1984, April 28th was established as a National Day of Mourning in Canada to remember and honour those who have died, been injured, or suffered illness in the workplace. The Day of Mourning, also known as Workers' Memorial Day, is officially recognized in about 100 countries worldwide. Today, on the National Day of Mourning, we remember and honor those who have lost their lives or been injured on the job. Every year, too many workers are injured or killed while simply trying to earn a living for themselves and their families. We must do everything in our power to ensure that every worker returns home safe at the end of the day. This is the day to take a moment to reflect on the importance of workplace safety and commit ourselves to creating safer working environments for everyone. It is with great respect and also great sorrow we remember those who have given their lives or their health to go to work, and we realize that more must be done to protect them.
The Honourable Member for Orléans. Madam Speaker, on April 10th, I stopped by the 15th Women in Business Excellence Awards Gala, where 3 Orleans residents were recognized for their leadership. Congratulations to Lydia Marie-Philippe, Young Leader, Hortense Mwemba, for her community involvement, and Sabine Daniel, Icon of the Year.
Host an iftar reception with leaders of our Muslim community of Orléans on April 18, where we gathered to break fast. I would like to take this opportunity to wish Eid Mubarak to all, which was celebrated on April 21st.
It was with a great deal of pride that I celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Béatrice Desloges Catholic Secondary School in Orleans on April 20th with former graduates and principals, teachers, and students to congratulate all the staff and employees for their dedication to French language education for the past 25 years. Congratulations.
The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, I want to bring this House's attention back to the horrible events that continue to unfold in Iran. Since the death of Mahsa Amini, the oppression from the Iranian regime has been relentless, and we must not look away. Today, I am announcing I'm politically sponsoring Samana Asghari. She's a children's rights activist and industrial engineering student that has been unjustly sentenced to 18 years in prison. We as members of parliament must continue to show the Iranian regime that we are watching, that we are looking at these individual cases, and we need to push our Canadian government to do more. Samana deserves her freedom. Iranians deserve their freedom, and they deserve to live in dignity with their human rights upheld. No one should ever be unjustly imprisoned, tortured, sexually assaulted, or worse, murdered for speaking out. Today, and until she is released, I will use my public platform to call for justice and freedom for Samana and for all Iranians. Women, life, freedom.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Madam Speaker, due to health problems, the Ethics Commissioner, Mr. Mario Dion, had to leave his position on February 21st after 43 years of public service, the last 5 of which were as Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner. Madam Speaker, I want you to know that Mr. Dion has brought a sense of perspective to his position, and I would like to thank him for his excellent work today. Throughout his term, Mr. Dion has ensured that the population can have confidence in him, despite the many failings of the members of the government with which he has had to deal. Let me quote him briefly. I firmly believe that educating constituents and the public about the importance of avoiding conflict of interest can help restore Canadians' confidence in institutions and ultimately our democracy. A huge challenge awaits his successor. Mr. Dion can leave office with his head held high. The office is a credible and admired institution. I would like to conclude by reminding you that it is urgent to fill this strategic position with someone who can be unanimous, because without a commissioner, there can be no investigation, and that is a situation we cannot accept. Thank you, Mr. Dion.
Member for Yellowhead.
Madam Speaker, the first vacation the Prime Minister went on was to a billionaire's private island, who claimed he was a close personal friend. Wasn't this also his first ethics violation? In 2021, the first ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, he and his family jetted off to Tofino for a surfing vacation. This year, before going on vacation at a luxurious Jamaican resort, he received approval from the Ethics Commissioner. Well, that luxurious Jamaican estate belonged to the wealthy Green family, who have made big donations to the Trudeau Foundation. The Prime Minister stated, Peter Green is a close personal friend. Wait, wasn't also the billionaire a close personal friend? Oh well, it's different this time. After all, they are both rich donors to the Trudeau Foundation. Madam Speaker, I am sure all Canadians agree they can't wait until this Prime Minister takes a permanent vacation from politics.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Preston-Chesapeake.
This week, the National Volunteer Week, and I wanted to take this opportunity to thank all the volunteers for their hard work, the dedication, the commitments, and the difference they make in our communities. Too often, we underestimate the hard work, the long hours that 24 million Canadian volunteers give of free time to their communities. The work of many organizations and associations would not be possible without their generous contribution of their volunteers. I want to highlight some of them in my riding. The Sackville River Association, Hope for Wildlife, Vets Canada, Freedom Kitchen, Sakawa, Chima, Orenda Canoe Clubs all play an important role in Sackville, Preston, Chesapeake. Our communities would not be the same without them. Let us be grateful now and throughout the year for the hard work of our volunteers. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable member for Thornhill.
While inflation, interest rates, housing prices spiraled out of control, the Prime Minister took a vacation. While Canadians from coast to coast commemorated the first Truth and Reconciliation Day, the Prime Minister took a vacation. While our airports and passport office lineups were out of control, the Prime Minister took a vacation. And now, while we face the largest public sector strike in Canadian history, the Prime Minister, and I'll let them figure out the next line. We know that the Prime Minister is not used to hard work, but can he at least pretend like he's trying?
L'honorable ministre du Tourisme.
The Honourable Tourism Minister.
For a question, and let's look at the facts. Canada's inflation rate has either remained flat or decreased now 9 months in a row. And at the same time, our economy has added, wait for it, 865,000 full-time jobs, 35,000 in March alone. Madam Speaker, while the Conservatives lack the confidence to invest in our country, Canadians know that the investments we are making are going to put this country on a solid path to prosperity for generations to come.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Speaker, there they go again telling Canadians that they've never had it so good. Do they really think that hardworking Canadians are that stupid? We have the highest inflation rate in 40 years. We have the highest interest rates in a generation. We have the most expensive housing on record. That's not an answer. Young people can't buy a home, single mothers can't buy food, and workers can't buy gas. The Prime Minister isn't working, and neither is his government. Does anyone over there really think Canadians won't notice?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism.
Madam Speaker, I know the Conservatives don't like the facts because, you know, it's a problem when you're Conservative and the truth gets in the way of a good story. But, Madam Speaker, the reality is that we have had unemployment levels at 5%. Madam Speaker, 865,000 jobs created since the worst time of the pandemic. Our recovery is at 126%. Madam Speaker, faster than the United States, the fastest growing economy in the G7. And, Madam Speaker, when it comes to that former government's record on poverty, Madam Speaker, we will take no lessons from them. Over 700,000 people lifted out of poverty since we formed government.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
The Liberals have made this mess, and now they're trying to tell Canadians that they're going to be the ones that clean it up. All we hear from them is more spending, more taxes, more government. The very things that got us into this mess in the first place. Crime is out of control in our biggest cities. There's a 32% increase. Young people can't buy a home because the price has doubled under their watch, and groceries face double-digit inflation. The house is on fire, and the Liberals are showing up with the flamethrower. And anybody who thinks that this will work is indulging in pure madness. Will they come to their senses and and get out of the way?
The Honourable Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
Actually, Madam Speaker, when the country was on fire, so to speak, because we were experiencing the biggest health and economic challenge in a generation because of the COVID pandemic, our government came with a fire extinguisher because we were there to support millions of Canadians, whether it was through the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, whether it was through the Canada Emergency Business Account, whether it was through the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, or what about the millions of vaccines that we provided to Canadians and the additional support we provided to provinces and territories to get us through the pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister is in New York, jet-setting with his buddies. Meanwhile, Canadians are suffering from the public service strike. In my riding, Mrs. Hamel, she is a mother of 3 children. She's from the Montchâtel area. She wanted to go on holiday with her 3-year-old son, but she doesn't have her passport. So she said she cried all she could. She stayed on the premises and waited, but they threw her outside without any emotion. They had no freaking empathy. They refused to let a 3-year-old go on holiday with his parents. So when is the Prime Minister going to get directly involved to resolve the strike?
Children and Social Development.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank you, my colleague, for this question. Unfortunately, passports are not considered essential. That's in the legislation, in the law. Unfortunately, during the strike, we cannot process passport applications. We understand that this has an impact on Canadians. That is exactly why we are at the bargaining table with the union, because we want to solve this issue. We want to end the strike soon because there are real consequences for Canadians. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Madam Speaker, that's exactly why it's time for the Prime Minister to be a true leader, because the government's been negotiating for 10 days without getting any results. It's time to change strategy, because after 10 days, nothing has changed. Mrs. Hamel says she is disgusted, discouraged, angry, and sad. She wrote, "My poor child, he was so excited to be on the beach with us." For Mrs. Hamel and thousands of Canadians suffering from the strike, here's my question. When will the Prime Minister get back to work and be the Prime Minister?
To the Prime Minister and to the President of the Treasury Board.
Madame la Présidente, nous sommes à la...
Madam Speaker, we are at the bargaining table with the Public Service Alliance of Canada. I can tell you that our goal is to resume regular activities and services as soon as possible. Madam Speaker, the government is determined to negotiate a deal that is reasonable for public servants and fair for Canadians. Madam Speaker, I can tell you that bargaining agents are there, negotiators are there, and the government is at the table negotiating in good faith. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Madam Speaker, in Quebec, French is declining as language spoken at home and at work. French is declining as a proportion of people whose first official language learned is French. So, in short, French is declining everywhere in Quebec. Unfortunately, the Liberal Action Plan on Official Languages invests tens of millions in promoting English in Quebec. All of Quebec's share is dedicated to English. Can the Liberals explain how massive funding of English in Quebec is going to stop the decline of French in Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Madam Speaker, it's very possible to defend French, to vigorously defend French without bullying, intimidating, criticizing, and attacking Anglophone communities, Madam Speaker, because whether we're Anglophone or Francophone, we are all Quebecers. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Madam Speaker, I'm not going to take any lessons from anyone. The Minister for Official Languages gave us a real gem yesterday. Her action plan does not fund English, it funds the vitality of the English-speaking community. Oh, well, that changes everything. Yet nearly 30% of people now use English as main language of work in Montreal. Meanwhile, the use of French as main work language has dropped by 13% in the communication sector and 11% in the finance sector. So the vitality of English is alive and well. So why are the Liberals investing in English when French is the language that's under threat? The Honourable Canadian Heritage Minister. Madam Speaker, we are investing in many ways to strengthen French. We're investing through the Official Languages Action Plan. We're investing in television production, also in literature, culture, in so many ways. But, Madam Speaker, the Bloc Québécois should stop trying to pit Anglophones against Francophones, Madam Speaker. The Bloc should understand once and for all that whether we are an Anglophone Quebecer or Francophone Quebecer, each and every one of us is, at the end of the day, a Quebecer. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Madam Speaker, we are all aware of the Prime Minister's irrepressible and borderline pathological desire to be in the company of the rich and famous, but this is not the time for champagne and selfies with Hollywood actors. This is the 10th day of the biggest strike in the country's history. 155,000 people, a majority of whom are women, by the way, are on the streets to defend their working conditions and their purchasing power. Is the Prime Minister so out of touch that he doesn't understand that these workers are just fighting to avoid becoming poorer? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister to the Prime Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I just said, we are at the bargaining table. The Canadian government is negotiating in good faith. The unions are still at the bargaining table too. I know how important this work is. We acknowledge that it's important because the public servants, we value the work they do. They provide essential services. We need to give them fair wages, but we also need to find a solution that's fair for Canadians too.
Griesbach.
Today, as we mark the National Day of Mourning, we remember all those killed or injured on the job. It's been over 20 years since the Westray Act was passed, a legal framework for workplace health and safety, and it imposes serious penalties on unsafe workplaces. Yet the Liberals have refused to properly educate law enforcement or take steps to enforce it. It's shameful for all workers who continue to be put in dangerous situations. Why does this government continue to ignore workers who deserve protections on the job? Will they enforce the Westray Act?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I wish to pass on my sympathies to the member who I heard is SO31 with his father's passing on the job, because one worker's death is too many workers' deaths. Speaker, workers have the right to refuse unsafe work if they feel their life, health, or safety is at risk. Employers have the duty and responsibility to protect the health and safety of workers. They are encouraged to seek guidance from the appropriate channels, including Public Health Agency of Canada, industry associations, and the Canadian Centre for Occupation Health and Safety. They must do this, and protecting lives and illness is a top priority. Thank you.
Good job. Hear, hear. The honourable member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Madam Speaker, it takes a special kind of incompetence to ramp up federal spending on the public service by over 50% and end up with the largest public service sector strike in Canadian history. Yeah. The Liberals are spending $22 billion more on its employees and wages. But taxpayers are receiving fewer services, in some cases no services, from government workers. When will the Liberal government get its employees back to work and protect Canadian taxpayers from more debt and high taxes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Prime Minister and to the President of the Treasury Board.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, Madam Speaker, it's really important to state that both parties are at the negotiating table. Right. The federal government is negotiating in good faith. Exactly. But, Madam Speaker, I know my receding hairline might give an indication that I'm a little bit long in the tooth, and I have a bit of a memory here. And I do remember on the other side of the aisle, when they were in government, what did they do every time that workers tried to have a collective agreement? They legislated them back to work, Madam Speaker. We believe in having a negotiated settlement that is fair for workers and is reasonable for Canadians.
Best. The honourable member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Madam Speaker, the largest public strike is not happening because of the Conservatives. We delivered on our promises. We didn't have a general strike of federal workers while we were balancing the books and cutting taxes on families and businesses. We were able to manage the federal government and keep delivering services to Canadians. The Liberals had 2 years to come to an agreement with the public service. Now 150,000 workers are out on strike. So again, when will the Prime Minister and this government get back to work?
The Honourable Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, the only thing the Conservatives did when they were in government is they balanced the books on the backs of Canadians. They did nothing when it came to helping Canadians get out of poverty, Madam Speaker. In contrast, Madam Speaker, what we've done is we've helped lift 450,000 children out of poverty, 2.7 million Canadians out of poverty, and at the height of the COVID crisis, you know what we did, Madam Speaker? We were there for every single Canadian, be it through wage supports or be it through services. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So for a while, we were running very smoothly. In the last two questions, there seems to have been members that feel that they need to either answer or make comments while others are speaking, which is not acceptable. Let's get back to the way that we were at the beginning of the question period. The honourable member for York Simcoe.
Madam Speaker, these Liberals
We've seen it time and time again. Inflation, passports, airports, cost of living, housing. Now it's the largest public service strike in history, despite increasing spending on the bureaucracy by $21 billion. There's no planning ahead, there's no leadership, no respect for taxpayers. Canadians just want their government back to work. Why is it this Liberal government never knows where the puck is going?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from that side of the aisle. Did you see what happened when President Biden was in this House, Madam Speaker? When the President spoke about women, they cowered. When the President spoke about unions, they wouldn't even stand up, Madam Speaker. Not only do they not respect collective bargaining, they ran a government that had economic stagnation for 9 years, Madam Speaker.
I'm going to get the Honourable Minister to restart his answer, and hopefully there won't be any interruptions this time.
Madam Speaker.
One moment. We don't have the attention of the House yet. Okay, the Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, we should roll the clip back when President Biden was in this House and the Conservatives wouldn't stand up when he talked about a gender-balanced cabinet, and the Conservatives wouldn't stand up when they talked about union rights. Madam Speaker, the Conservatives don't believe in collective bargaining. We do. We're going to get a deal that's fair for Canadians, a deal that's fair for the federal public servants. And Madam Speaker, why don't they like the fact that we had more public servants? I can't tell you, but they helped us get through the pandemic. They don't like it. Canadians do. We're going to get a good deal.
The Honourable Member for York Simcoe.
Madam Speaker, Canadians are getting their lunch eaten and being told it's good for you. But under the Liberals, everything is broken. Canadians are being denied basic government services once again because of the largest public service strike in history. They say Nero played the fiddle while Rome burned. The Prime Minister is now doing the same. But knowing him, he's playing dress up. When will he fix the mess that he made?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Sports and to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Canadians deserve elected representatives who come to Ottawa with solutions, not just cheap shots and slogans. Triple triple's a coffee order at Tim Hortons, not a policy solution. It's not a valuable contribution to the debate in this House, but Budget 2023 invests in solutions like dental care for uninsured families, like investments in mental health, like more doctors and nurses to reduce wait times and make sure that Canadians can get the procedures and the surgeries that they need. When will the Conservatives propose some solutions instead of just these childish slogans? Some solutions, everyone. That's what Canadians need.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Well, we will have solutions when we're government. In Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier and in Valcartier, parents have to take leave because they can't get around in the streets. Canadians have questions that don't have answers about their tax filings. And also, people can't get passports. People have invested their entire year's savings to go on vacation, and yet they can't get a passport. This government is responsible for this strike. The only ones to blame. Where's the Prime Minister when it's time to negotiate and get the country out of this crisis? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister. Madam Speaker, as I've said many times, we are at the bargaining table. We are there with the union. We are there in good faith, negotiating and bargaining in good faith, Madam Speaker. And I'm convinced that when both parties at the table are together working in good faith, we will reach a solution. Madam Speaker, there are, of course, some situations we want to avoid, such as the situation with the Conservatives, where every time there's a problem, they always blame public servants. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Madam Speaker, I don't think my colleague is catching what we've been saying for 10 years. The cost of bureaucracy has increased by 50%. Canadian taxpayers are paying for that, and yet they're receiving fewer services. Now, the Canadian Public Service has 155,000 employees on strike. This is the biggest strike in the history of the country. The government's inaction over the past 2 years led to this conflict. When will the Prime Minister come back and fix the problem?
Families, Children and Social Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What my honourable colleague doesn't seem to understand is that increased spending was to better serve Canadians throughout the pandemic. I know that the Conservatives seem to have forgotten that we had a pandemic. The pandemic was a blow, a shock to the economy, to our healthcare system as well. Our government was there for Canadians during the pandemic. We guaranteed that Canadians received wage support. We also were there for Canadian businesses. We will continue to negotiate and bargain well with the union. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Madam Speaker, at this point, the ties between the Prime Minister and the Trudeau Foundation are very clear. His family, his staff, and himself are involved. It's very clear. And the ties between the Chinese regime and the foundation are also very clear after a suspicious $140,000 donation. The Trudeau Foundation is a catalogue of friends of the Liberal Party, and that's why it's of interest to China. All Quebecers understand that. So one question remains: who can trust people from the foundation to investigate Beijing's moves to cozy up to the Liberal circles?
Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, Madam Speaker, where I agree with the member is that it is very clear. The Prime Minister has had no direct or indirect contact with the Trudeau Foundation for over 10 years now. That's well established, and it is very clear.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Madam Speaker, Ottawa must crack down. That was the warning of Raphael Glucksmann last week. He's the chairman of Europe's Special Committee on Foreign Interference. I quote him: "What has allowed for these repeated aggressions to take place is the absence of sanctions. In the European Union, there have been no sanctions." So, Madam Speaker, this is why the Bloc is calling for three things. First, an independent public inquiry. Second, a permanent independent inquiry office. And third, a law on foreign interference in order to properly equip the police. No one will be satisfied with a report that's been discredited in advance, a report by the Trudeau Foundation. When will the Prime Minister realize that?
L'Honorable Ministre des Affaires.
The Honourable Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs, Infrastructure and Communities. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My Bloc colleague knows full well that our government has strengthened laws to combat foreign interference in our democratic institutions. He knows full well, as well, that we have taken many measures. We have taken action. We've done things that were not in place in 2015 when we came into office. We have strengthened our democratic institutions and combated foreign interference. We've been aware of this for many years, and the good news, Madam Speaker, is that we're working hard on an ongoing basis to strengthen our legislation and policy, and we look forward to hearing from Mr. Johnston.
By using the Trudeau Foundation, a Beijing influence operation was successful. For $140,000, Beijing had access to the Prime Minister and to the man the Prime Minister picked to investigate and report on foreign interference in our elections. And what did that report say? Surprise! Nothing to see here. Is $140,000 the cost to influence our democracy under these Liberals?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Well, Madam Speaker, talk about bending the truth. The reality is very simple, Madam Speaker. At the end of the day, the Prime Minister has had no direct or indirect contact with the Foundation for over 10 years now. The member knows that, Madam Speaker.
Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
These guys are unreal. They're the only ones who think that arm's length means literally holding a meeting arm's length from the Prime Minister's desk. Yes. They have allowed Beijing to directly interfere in our elections and gave direct access to the Prime Minister and the person who was supposed to investigate interference in our elections. It's unbelievable. It's frankly not credible. Conservatives have called for hearings to occur on this, and we've invited, because he asked in the newspapers to appear, Mr. Alexandre Trudeau to appear committee to answer questions. So the Prime Minister's brother's going to answer questions. The board that's falling apart is answering questions. When will these Liberals finally give Canadians answers?
Yeah. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, again, Madam Speaker, the member is very much aware that standing committees get the opportunity to call the witnesses that they so choose to call, and we respect that, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, Trudeau Foundation donors paid for the Prime Minister's luxurious $80,000 Caribbean vacation. The Prime Minister's brother signed off on a $140,000 Beijing bribe to the Foundation to buy his influence, and the Foundation held a meeting with 5 deputy ministers in none other than the Prime Minister's own office. And the Prime Minister claims that he has nothing to do with the Trudeau Foundation? Really?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Government House Leader.
Yes, Madam Speaker, really. You know, I don't know how much clearer I can be on this issue. The Prime Minister has very much indicated that there has been no direct or indirect contact with the Trudeau Foundation. The member knows that, and that has not taken place for over 10 years now.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, there's more. The Prime Minister appointed the former president of the Trudeau Foundation to whitewash Beijing's interference in the 2021 election, interference to help him get re-elected. Convenient appointments, paid vacations, meetings in his office, and Beijing bribes, all connecting this Prime Minister to the Trudeau Foundation. When will the Prime Minister and this government stop insulting the intelligence of Canadians and admit that he's closely connected to the foundation that bears his name?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, to the member, tin hats are on sale on Amazon. You know, really, Madam Speaker, I've been very, very clear on the issue. The Prime Minister has not had direct or indirect contact with the foundation now for well over 10 years.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Madam Speaker, while the Prime Minister is smoozing with billionaires, bankers, and taking selfies with Hollywood stars, 155,000 civil servant workers are on day 10 of their strike. In Winnipeg, 9,000 workers are on the streets waiting on this Prime Minister to deliver a fair wage to keep up with inflation. The Prime Minister's lack of attention, quite frankly, is disrespectful, Madam Speaker. When will the Prime Minister get to the negotiation table to deliver a fair deal that workers deserve?
Yes. Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister and to the President of the Treasury Board.
Madam Speaker, let me make this perfectly clear. The negotiators for the federal government are at the table. The negotiators, and they're negotiating in good faith. The negotiators for the unions are at the table, and they are negotiating. Madam Speaker, the best deal to happen is at the negotiating table, and if they work together, I'm confident that they'll come to an agreement.
The Honourable Member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Madam Speaker, migrant workers in the care economy are essential. They deserve respect and they deserve to stay here if they choose. They take care of our aging parents, grandparents, and loved ones. The Liberals must grant permanent residency for migrant workers and their families, so they have the same protections and rights as any Canadian worker. When will the Minister of Immigration grant permanent residency for migrant workers in Canada?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire pour le ministre d'Immigration et de Citoyenneté canadienne.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to say thank you to the member for her question and for advocacy for caregivers in our countries. You know, as a former social worker, Madam Speaker, I know the hardship of caregivers, and I also have worked with caregivers in many of my roles before entering politics. And Madam Speaker, we have announced that we're reducing work requirement from 24 to 12 months to help reduce the barriers to get a PR. We sincerely value the sacrifice of our caregivers. We will always try to help people. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
L'honorable député de Sudbury.
Madam Speaker, today is the National Day of Mourning, when we remember those who died on the job and commit to safer and more respectful workplaces for all. A safe workplace is a fundamental right of every Canadian worker. One death in the workplace is one too many. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Labour tell us what our government is doing to help ensure workplaces are safe for Canada's workers on this National Day of Mourning?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks to the member from Sudbury for continuing to support workers. Every worker in Canada has the right to a safe and healthy workplace and to return home safely at the end of their workday. On the National Day of Mourning, we pay tribute to all workers who have lost their lives, been injured, or fallen ill at work. As we pause to reflect, we also see April 28 as a call to continued action. As we honor the memory of those lives lost, we are rededicating ourselves to creating and fostering workplaces where all workers can do their best work knowing that they are physically and mentally safe, because one accident or one death on the job is one too many. Thank you.
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
We know that for years, Beijing has attempted to exert undue influence in Canada. But this is the very first government, the very first Prime Minister, who has willingly offered Beijing cash for access. The first government that's gone that far. $140,000 is all that it takes. It might as well be 30 pieces of silver. Why does this Prime Minister believe that our democracy is up for sale?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's somewhat unfortunate that the Conservatives want to continue the partisanship of attack, character assassinations, and so forth, when there are so many different issues that Canadians are facing today. One of the budget announcements that I'm very proud of and feel that Canadians are very glad to see is the grocery rebate, Madam Speaker. That is putting money in the pockets of Canadians, somewhere in the tune of 11 million people will benefit by it, Madam Speaker. I think the Conservatives need to get in touch with what Canadians are really concerned about.
We're starting to hear a buzz again of people who are thinking out loud, and I would ask them to please keep it for themselves for a bit, because it's not their time. The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. They say that if you don't learn from history, you are doomed to repeat it. So you would think that the Liberals would have learned a lesson or two with their many failed firearms policies, but yet here we are. Rather than focusing on the violent criminals who are causing havoc in our streets, they would rather implement a buyback program from our lawful, law-abiding retailers. So, Madam Speaker, why won't the Prime Minister get back to work and focus on criminals rather than lawful citizens?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Combating crime is a complex issue, and rather than offering solutions, the party opposite wants to come up with catchy slogans and be obstructionist when it comes to the policies we're putting forward. We need to be dealing with mental health. We are providing options when it comes to housing. We are very proud of Bill C-21 and the things that are being put in there to get a handgun freeze and additional penalties on organized crime. Madam Speaker, we're taking an overall approach to dealing with crime, and I'm proud of what we're doing.
Remember for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Well, classic Liberals, they don't want the facts to get in the way of a good virtue signal. But the facts are, Madam Speaker, that under the previous Conservative government, violent crime was down 20%. Under this Liberal government, violent crime is up 32%, and gang-related serious crime is up 98%. The Prime Minister would rather go on vacation than make sure that violent criminals stay in jail. So my question to you, Madam Speaker, is this. When will the Prime Minister take a permanent vacation so that Conservatives can fix what he broke?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Today, the Minister of Public Safety is actually meeting with Secretary Mayorkas and Attorney General Garland from the United States at a cross-border crime forum, because we recognize that this issue transcends borders. That's why we've invested in the borders, something that the Conservatives voted against. That's why we've invested in law enforcement, why we've invested in communities, so that community programs can be put in place to divert kids from gangs. We're taking an overall policy position on this, and I'm proud of where we are, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny-Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, on the streets and in urban public transit, Canadians are feeling less and less safe, and that's because this Prime Minister is soft on crime. Violent offenders are released the very day that they're arrested, and gun crimes go unpunished and or do community service. Will this Prime Minister finally get back to work, punish violent criminals, and protect victims?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam Speaker, Canadians deserve to feel safe.
To feel and be safe. All governments have a role to play in this, Madam Speaker. We will not solve this problem with empty slogans and misinformation. We need to work together. In March, the Minister of Justice met with the provincial and territorial counterparts to address the problem of violent repeat offenders. After a very productive FPT, we agreed our government would table legislation, and we look forward to working with all parties to get to the right solution on this, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Madam Speaker, Ottawa has already reinstated Hockey Canada's funding, but there's nothing that's been solved in terms of sexual misconduct in sport. The Minister decided, without an acceptable inquiry and without waiting for the conclusions from FIWO, that this was fine. And there were very horrible testimony before the committee. So there's nothing being done to reassure young women in sport. It's practically unanimous in this House. There will be no change in sports culture without an independent public inquiry. When will the Minister finally act and launch this public inquiry? The Honourable Minister of Sport. Madam Speaker, first of all, I would like to commend the courage of everyone who came to testify before FIWO and before the Heritage Committee as well. And out of respect for those people who told their stories and for whom it was very difficult, we have to continue to work together in a nonpartisan manner. I have already said that we're going to launch an investigation to make sure that we make the right decisions to ensure that our children and our athletes across Canada are protected, both in community sport and in our national teams. And in a few weeks, we're going to be able to announce some good news. The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the victims of misconduct are not reassured by this. Many of them have testified that they don't trust the current process through the Sports Integrity Commissioner, who systematically rejects 2/3 of all complaints, especially the apology of Hockey Canada. Hockey Canada does not help gymnasts, skiers, or water polo players. This is the entire sports culture must change. The House of Commons has already unanimously called for a public, independent public inquiry commission, and the victims have too. When will the Minister act? The Honourable Minister of Sport. Madam Speaker, we are all on the same side here, and we agree that Canada's sports system must be improved and that self-regulation of sports commissions must stop. We are working now both with victims and organizations to put in place best practices to ensure better mechanisms, and we're going to ensure that these organizations protect children, protect athletes, and that we have robust rules in place. We are committed to this, and we're going to get the job done. Thank you.
For Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Madam Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians can't afford a place to live. What do the Liberals have to show for the $90 billion they've committed to housing? Mortgages have doubled, rents have doubled. It's $2,500 a month for a couple to rent one room in a townhouse. Not the townhouse, just the room. A government on autopilot can't fix a housing crisis. When will this jet-setting Prime Minister and his government get back to work?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize the challenges faced by Canadians affording, in order to be able to afford a place to call home. We've put together a national housing strategy which includes the Canada Housing Benefit, which goes directly to the pockets of vulnerable renters so that they can pay the rent. In addition to that, we topped it up with a one-time $500 top-up to the Canada Housing Benefit. But the Canada Housing Benefit continues to exist in every province and territory, and unfortunately the Conservatives voted against it, but we continue to make sure that each and every Canadian has a safe and affordable place to call home.
The Honourable Member for Mission Matsky Fraser Canyon.
Well, Mr. Speaker, for those in the middle class and working hard to join it, 8 years of these Liberals, things have never been more unaffordable. Despite committing $90 billion on housing, people can't find a place to live. The average rent and mortgage has doubled, and home prices have skyrocketed. It costs $2,500 a month for a couple to rent one room in a townhouse. Not a townhouse, just the room. When will this government get back to work and let small businesses build the homes that Canadians need?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Diversity and Inclusion.
It's really difficult to take the party opposite seriously on housing. That member has been on record saying that the federal government needs to do less on housing, that we should just download everything to the provinces and walk away. That kind of thinking is what led his leader to suggest that people should embrace cryptocurrency in order to opt out of inflation. That kind of thinking is what underpins their logic that somehow if we walk away, magically everything will work out. That is not the kind of leadership that we need. They need to get serious about housing, and they need to support our investments to support vulnerable Canadians.
Our member for Mission Matsky Fraser Canyon.
Madam Speaker, I feel like I'm living in a dystopian fantasy land outlined in the novel 1984 and hearing doublespeak. Everything this minister says, we should just assume the opposite is the truth. The reality is in this country, self-employment is dropping off a statistical cliff, and as a result, less homes are being built, Madam Speaker. So I'll ask again, when will this government get back to work and let small businesses build the homes that middle-class Canadians need?
Yeah. Great question. The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, let the private sector figure it out. Let the federal government walk away, don't invest anything in housing, and somehow magically everything will make sense. It's the same kind of thinking that led his leader to suggest magically that people can opt out of inflation by embracing cryptocurrency. That is not a plan, Madam Speaker. What is a plan is the National Housing Strategy that is investing in every spectrum of housing to make sure that Canadians have access to safe and affordable place to call home. The honourable member talks about housing supply. Housing Accelerator Fund, he voted against it.
The honourable member for Vancouver Granville.
Madam Speaker, this week we celebrated National Tourism Week. The sector of tourism is vital to Canada's economy and to BC. It has been hard hit these past years. Can the Minister of Tourism tell this House what the government is doing for this essential sector? The Honourable Minister of Tourism. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague from Vancouver Granville for his question and for his diligent work. Our government is determined to see the tourism industry continue to grow and prosper, and that is why every year we celebrate National Tourism Week. We have invested $158 million in the 2023 budget so that Canadians and Indigenous partners can reach this goal. I would like to thank all of our partners and workers in the sector who are at the very heart of this industry and who work tirelessly to make Canada the best destination in the world. Thank you.
Okanagan Shuswap.
Look out, Canadians. This Prime Minister wants to tax your gas off. His plan, which will triple the carbon tax, will make it unaffordable for Canadians to drive to work or heat their homes. It is nothing more than a tax plan. His plan has failed to meet any emissions reductions targets, so now he's going to make you pay more. Yeah. Meanwhile, he's taking vacations burning taxpayers' gas. Will a PM stop saving his own gas and cancel his plan to triple the carbon tax?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Well, Madam Speaker, much like the Conservatives would like to deny it, climate change is real. And you know what else is real, Madam Speaker? Those checks that are arriving in people's mailboxes beginning April 14th, Madam Speaker. In my home province of Manitoba, $250 a quarter, over $1,000 a month, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, you know what's not real? Some of the conspiracy theories that are purported by the other side and cryptocurrency, Madam Speaker. I wouldn't invest in cryptocurrency, Madam Speaker. It's a really bad thing to do.
Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Canadians continue to struggle due to the soaring costs of fuel for their cars, homes, and their groceries. People on fixed incomes can't absorb the rising costs, and they don't have the opportunity to realize additional wages. This government is crippling Canadians financially, and to suggest that the carbon tax rebate covers the additional tax is absolutely nonsense. Madam Speaker, will the Prime Minister cancel the plan to triple the carbon tax?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Well, Madam Speaker, good news for Canadians. Starting April 14th, those checks began arriving in people's mailboxes. In Alberta, $1,500 per year, Madam Speaker, and that's over $350 a quarter, $1,000 in Manitoba. 8 out of 10 families will be better off, Madam Speaker. Those checks, as I mentioned, will arrive quarterly. That's going to help with cash flow. That's going to help with affordability, Madam Speaker. The Conservatives don't seem to be interested in either.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Madam Speaker, my question goes to the Minister of Agriculture. The Olymel Slaughterhouse in Vallée-Jonction in my riding, which employs 1,000 workers, announced that it was closing in December 2023. This will greatly affect the pork sector, not only in Quebec, but also in Ontario. 70% of Canadian pork production is exports, and yet the Minister has not mentioned this at all since the announced 2 weeks ago. What is she going to do to help workers, and especially pork producers who are going to be directly impacted by the closure of Olymel? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. Of course, my colleague knows very well that the Minister is in Japan defending the interests of farmers in Canada. And obviously, my colleague knows because he moved the motion that we're going to hear in the upcoming days concerning the Agriculture Committee. The Government of Quebec is committed to working hand in hand with Olymel. Obviously, Olymel made a business decision and has not reached out to us to find a solution, but obviously we're willing to work with the sector to defend the interests of farmers and workers. Thank you. I would just like to remind the members that he is not allowed to refer to who is in the House or not. And the other thing that I would like to mention is that I heard a telephone ring, so could you please ensure that your telephones are in silent mode and that they are not close to the microphones, because we want to ensure the safety of interpreters. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, too many people are the victim of sexual violence. We know how important it is for police services to have access to important tools like the National Sex Offenders Registry to investigate and prevent sexual violence. We also know going through the criminal justice system process can be hard for victims. Can the Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Justice tell us more about the new bill we introduced to protect Canadians against sexual violence and empower victims?
Honourable Member, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague from Calgary Skyview for this very important question, as well as his hard work in his community. We just introduced Bill S-12 in the Senate. It strengthens the National Sex Offenders Registry by requiring all offenders to register unless they can prove that they do not pose a risk to public safety. S-12 also gives victims more of a say in whether a publication ban is ordered, and gives survivors a clear pathway to modify or revoke a ban. Some victims want to protect their identity, others want to tell their story. It should be their choice, Madam Speaker. We look forward to the support of all of our colleagues in the House and Senate to ensure that Bill S-12 is passed quickly. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member Cowichan-Malahat-Langford.
Madam Speaker, the Port Renfrew Chamber of Commerce and sport fishers in my community are really frustrated. Starting July 15th, Fisheries and Oceans will close a prime Chinook fishing spot off the coast of southwest Vancouver Island without doing sufficient consultation with locals or First Nations. These hardworking people rely on this fishing spot to earn their income and support their families. So why, Madam Speaker, why is the Minister yet again ignoring coastal communities and their expertise?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, in fact, if you look across the country, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans has put special emphasis on working with coastal communities, looking at a rural development strategy plan, whether it is focusing on small craft harbors, working on indigenous knowledge, working with fishers to put in place programs that help fishers, that help communities, that help generate community wealth. That's what this side is about. But I take the member's question at heart, and I will bring that back to the Minister and get back to him in due course.
The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Madam Speaker, the Canada Summer Jobs Program is not only a financial lifeline for nonprofits, charities, and small businesses, it's a critical support for young people looking to get their start in the workforce. This year, though, the program's been cut by over 50%. That's 60 million less than even pre-pandemic levels. It means small organizations in my community, from Kafka to Red Raccoon Bike Rescue, are reeling. Does the federal government understand these drastic cuts have real impacts on essential community organizations across the country?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Madam Speaker, I thank my colleague for the question. I know many of us in this House cherish what this program does on the ground in our communities for youth. What I would say to my colleague is that MP input on this program is vital to the success of this program, and our on-the-ground understanding as MPs of what's needed in our communities is really important to the success and important to the youth. And while the number of positions in some of our youth programs in CSJ have recovered back to pre-pandemic levels, we will keep providing opportunities to youth for youth employment across the country. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of question period. À la suite de discussion.
Following discussions among the representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence to commemorate the National Day of Mourning and to honor the memory of workers killed or injured at work.
Members to rise for a moment of silence. Thank you. Tabling of documents. Introduction of government bills. Déclaration de ministre.
Statements by ministers. Presenting reports from interparliamentary delegations. Presenting reports from committees.
From committees? No. Introduction of private members' bills. Première lecture de projet de...
First reading of Senate public bills. Motions.
The honourable member for Mission Matsky Fraser Canyon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I am pleased to table